The scene begins with a description of Earth's demise, as told by Joel Dawson. Agatha 16 was a meteor that was headed straight for Earth, but it was destroyed by rockets launched by many countries. This resulted in chemical compounds showering down on Earth's organisms, transforming animals such as insects, crabs, and slugs into monstrous proportions. Over 95% of humanity vanishes within a year. In the 7 years afterward, Joel and other survivors have been hunkering down in a bunker colony. Joel lies in his bed listening to his roommate Tim, having some passionate moments with his girl Ava. The first baby in the colony during the apocalypse is born during winter. Joel and Kala got together. Unfortunately, there's now just one cow in the colony, and her name is Gertie. They have a large supply of food and other necessities being stored in the bunker. In Joel's colony, he is the only single member who spends his free time with this broken robot, imaginary companion Mavis, and not with a loving partner. Their link is cut abruptly as an ant monster invades the colony. Joel is instructed to remain in the bunker while the rest of the colony grabs their homemade weapons to fight the ants. Joel's eager to show his peers that he's capable of holding his own in a fight. When Joel disobeys instructions and sneaks out with a crossbow, he discovers one of his companions has been eaten by an ant. After being located by the monster, Joel pauses just in time to see the ant be shot with an arrow. The day the monster apocalypse began 7 years ago, they went up to a hill where Joel and Amy sat in their vehicle, gazing out over the city. Though he sketched her, he knows the painting is bad. Just as they begin making out, they hear the sirens and watch the rockets take off. The next thing they know, they're on their way home to see their loved ones. He calls his high school sweetheart Amy one day on the radio. They both enjoy talking when the connection is lost. Joel and his girlfriend Amy are separated during the Fairfield evacuation, but he swears he will locate her. At Jenner Beach, just 85 miles from Joel's location, Amy's staying with another colony of survivors. While the rest of the colony warns Joel not to risk venturing out alone to locate Amy, Joel ignores their warnings and sets off anyway. His ability to make minestrone and do occasional handy labor is valuable to them. Joel pleads with the others to let him escape with whatever weapons he can carry, saying that he doesn't want to be alone for the end of the world. Joel emerges from the bunker. To locate Amy, Joel ventures into the world outside. He explores a mysterious abandoned house and encounters a monster inhabitant. Soon after setting out on his journey, Joel discovers a frog monster in a pond. A stray dog comes to Joel's rescue by biting the frog's tongue as it attempts to eat him. When the dog gets on a bus, he follows it and learns that its name is Boy. When Joel tries to touch the red dress, Boy retains from his former owner. He becomes protective. Joel spends the night on the bus with Boy. Joel attempts to leave the house without Boy in the morning, but Boy insists on coming along. Joel agrees, and they soon discover that Boy makes a great partner in crime. Aside from that, he also manages to prevent Joel from eating the poison berries. While out and about, Joel stumbles onto a colony of warm creatures. Clyde and Minnow, both surviving, locate him. They help in rescuing him and kill the monsters with the samurai sword and a grenade. The two mock Joel for venturing out into the field with such little training, but they eventually invite him and Boy on their journey to the mountains, where the climate is too harsh for monsters to survive. Clyde and Minnow teach Joel how to deal with monsters, from identifying specific monsters to improving his crossbow skills. Along the way, they encounter a gigantic snail species they call the boulder snails. The monster might steal Joel's scent and lure the other monsters away from them. Clyde makes him remove his shirt. It's true that some monsters are friendly, he and Minnow say, but you can usually tell by gazing into their eyes. They do not really rest much for fear that the monsters may raid their food stores while they're sleeping. When he says he's going to look for Amy, they instruct him to keep looking no matter where he ends up. They find a safe refuge later that evening and turn in for the night. Joel explains to Clyde that he left the colony in search of his lover. Joel's crossbow skills are much better after a lesson from Minnow on how to aim and shoot accurately. They push further as Clyde keeps instructing Joel on how to stay alive on his adventure. At the end of their journey, Joel chooses to go his own way from Clyde and Minnow. The little girl is heartbroken since she's become close to Joel, but she's happy to get a tube of lipstick as a souvenir from him, which she adores and appreciates. Before they part ways, Clyde offers him some words of wisdom. After some exploration with Boy, Joel and Boy come upon a huge centipede creature that almost devours Boy. This time though, Joel is reminded of the time he was similarly still when with his parents on the day of the end of the world. He was unable to stop the monster that was crushing them. In an effort to rescue Boy, he musters his bravery and shoots the monster twice, killing it. Joel and Boy take refuge in a broken vehicle where they encounter Mavis, a robot that's been apparently designed to be a friend but is now shut down along with all of its counterparts, including the one back at Joel's colony. There is some battery life remaining on this active Mavis. She uses a radio to put Joel in contact with Amy, and he discovers that he's only around 10 miles away. As Amy informs Joel, a boat captain and his crew have just come. Mavis projects a light show when the radio's turned off, and even gives Joel a video remembrance of his mother's supportive words to him, which brings him to tears. The memory of his parents is still vivid and makes him regret not saving them. They see sky jellies that light up the sky and are harmful, according to Mavis. Eventually, Mavis's power source runs out, and Joel buries the robot. The next day, Joel and Boy continue their journey, but Boy gets distracted by his owner's dress and leaps into the river. As a result, a queen sand gobbler, a particularly dangerous creature, has taken notice. Joel kills it with a well-timed grenade throw, which he directs directly into the monster's gaping maw. But then, Joel shouts at Boy for almost killing them, and the small dog bolts away from him. After being bitten by multiple leeches, he begins to experience hallucinations as the poison takes effect. He discovers a fern that Clyde has told him might be useful as an anti-venom. Now he sees Amy and some of the other survivors coming towards him. The two have a tender moment before he blacks out. Upon regaining consciousness in Amy's bunker, Joel finds out that instead of her, he kissed an older male survivor. She introduces him to Cap, who she says is in charge of the yacht crew that has come to transport the colony to a more secure place. As soon as Joel realizes what's going on at the beach, he and Amy get some alone time. Even though she's happy to see him and left with the impression that he made it, she lets him know that she's moved on and even had a relationship with another survivor who passed away a year ago. Although he understands, Joel is heartbroken. Cap calls a meeting of the survivors to discuss his plan to relocate everyone, but Joel, being equipped with new information, advises that they give the surface another try. Those will choose the boat route. Afterward, he makes touch with his colony to report his safe arrival. The news that Joel has successfully killed a monster elicited universal excitement upon hearing his voice. As if on time, a tray of berries is put in front of him, and he realizes that these are the same berries that Boy had been warning him about. Joel learns that Cap is deceptive. Joel is hit in the head by Cap's goon, Dana, as he tries to alert Amy. Joel remembers waking up in the arms of Amy. Cap admits that he, Dana, and Rocco have been utilizing a large crab monster that Cap controls with electromagnetic manipulation to plunder several colonies of their resources while also pulling the yacht. Joel gets away when Cap sends the crab after the survivors, and he also witnesses Boy's reappearance. While he and Amy fight with the crab and the other bad guys, he sends Boy to assist Amy. After being caught by the crab, Joel looks into the creature's eyes and realizes that the crab is really one of the nicer creatures. When he shoots at the electrical cord, the crab is released, and it swims out to the yacht, where it feasts on Dana, Rocco, and eventually Cap, and the wreck of his ship. With the understanding that he will be rejected by his home colony, Joel makes preparations to return there. He and Amy have one final passionate embrace before he has to say goodbye. Amy's interest in Joel seems to have been rekindled as she informs him that she plans to track him down. He packs up Boy and heads back to the colony, where he's greeted with open arms, leaving her with his monster survival handbook. Now that he knows more about the local wildlife, Joel guides his colony to the surface. Through the radio, he sends a message to the other survivors, encouraging them to return to the surface and prepare for a potential war. The message reaches Clyde and Minnow, who have made it to the summit, and they wish Joel well, despite their belief that he will be killed by snow spiders. Clyde and Minnow, who are already in the mountains, while everyone continues north, worry about Joel's chances of making it through the next journey. If you want to watch much more, click on our next videos and playlists on the screen. Thanks for watching!